Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Place Overview Committee. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to view the meeting using the link on the agenda. We'll move to item 1, which is apologies for absence. We have none from councillors, so thank you all very much for being here today. And we have an apology of Officer Mark Barrow, the Director of Place, who sends his apologies. He had an extremely important meeting that he has to attend. We now move on to item 2. Has anybody got any disposable pecuniary interest? Members are reminded that they must declare their disposable pecuniary interest and other registrable or non-registrable interests in any matter being considered at the meeting, as set out in Appendix B of the Members' Code of Conduct, and consider if they should leave the room prior to the item being considered. Has anybody got any? We have none. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there anything anyone wishes to pick up from those meetings? From those minutes? No one? Can I have somebody to move them then, please? Thank you, Julia. Seconder? Paul? Thank you. If only all items are this quick. Item 4, public question time. We have none. 5, member question time. We do have a question from Councillor Julian Dean. Daniel Webb will respond.
I think Julian has to read the question.
Would you like to read the question, Julian?
Thank you very much. From April next year, it will be unlawful to continue to let commercial premises that have an EPC rating below E, with some exceptions. Looking ahead, the government plans for commercial EPC ratings of B from 2030. Ensuring compliance will benefit SMEs, small and medium enterprises in Shropshire facing high energy bills, as well as help to begin to reduce the county's carbon footprint. Can assurance be given that the council's own property portfolio, whether leased out or leased in, has been checked and will comply with these regulations as a minimum? There are around 300 plus freehold properties leased out and around 150 properties leased in by the council for information. Shall I do them one at a time like that?
Yes.
Dan Webb, Overview and Scrutiny Officer. We can give assurance that the council's own property portfolio, whether leased out or leased in, is in the process of being checked, and certainly no action will be taken to contravene the new legislation introduced next year.
What work is being done to ensure the county's commercial landlords will be in compliance by the 1st of April?
Again, responding on behalf of the service, the council will be unable to measure the county's commercial landlords will be compliant. So I'll start again. The council will be unable to ensure that the county's commercial landlords will be compliant by the 1st of April 2023. The council has had to consider its work on minimum efficiency energy standards alongside other equally important priorities aimed at protecting both local residents and businesses. We're currently focusing on the MEES, minimum energy efficiency standards, for domestic private rented accommodation as a result of specific funding that the council successfully bid for in the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. This has enabled the council to employ 3 additional officers until the end of May 2023 to specifically undertake this type of MEES enforcement work. No external funding has been made available in respect of undertaking work on the MEES for commercial, non-domestic, private rented properties, and there is currently no indication that this position will change. This has meant that the MEES work that has been and will continue to be undertaken on commercial properties is currently limited to a commitment to provide reactive advice to those landlords / property owners, property businesses who seek advice from the council, and to deal with any breaches that are reported in accordance with the better regulation and enforcement policy. Depending on the circumstances of any reported breaches, a decision may still be made to take no further action.
Thank you. What measures will the council take to enforce the statutory penalties that apply should lettings be non-compliant after the 1st of April?
The response again on behalf of the service. In the event that the outcome of an investigation into an NEES non-compliance of a commercial rented property leads to the conclusion that a financial penalty is proportionate and appropriate sanction, given the circumstances of the case, the Council has the necessary delegated authorities in place to ensure the relevant statutory financial penalties. However, the imposition of any financial penalty would be, in the majority of cases, a last resort in line with the Council's better regulation and enforcement policy. In addition, in order to minimise the risk of legal challenge and to provide a robust position to defend any such challenges, the Council would want to consult on and implement a supplementary policy setting. Would want to consult on and implement a supplementary policy setting out further details on how the financial penalties are determined. This has already been completed for domestic private rented accommodation to support BEIS funded work referred to above. However, it is yet to be undertaken for private rented commercial properties. For this reason, the Council only currently consider enforcement action on a commercial property where it is directly reported that it does not satisfy the NEES and there is a very clear and significant detrimental impact to the health of the occupants, the environment and/or the cost of heating the commercial property. And that intervention by the Council is the only option available to reduce or prevent this detrimental impact. In any such case, we would use the relevant elements of the Council's private rented sector housing enforcement policy published in 2022 July as an interim guide to direct the use of financial penalties and to determine the level at which they may be set. Actually imposing a financial penalty would not be without risk, as the private rented sector housing enforcement policy does not cover the NEES of commercial rented properties, and the Council would ultimately be relying directly on the relevant provisions in the Energy Efficiency Private Rented Property England and Wales Regulations 2015, aka the 2015 regulations, and on the guidance for landlords and enforcement authorities on the minimum level of energy efficiency required to let non-domestic property under the 2015 regulations, which was issued by the BEIS in February 2017.
Thank you, Dan.
We're not there yet, I'm afraid. Will the Council use its right to publish details of breaches of the regulations?
Where the Council has, from the service, where the Council has undertaken an investigation and collated sufficient evidence in relation to a commercial property to prove that it does not meet the MEES, and this has been considered against the good regulation principles set out in the Council's better regulation and enforcement policy, the Council may publish details of breaches. This is referred to as the publication penalty, in accordance with the provisions set out in the 2015 regulations. Each case will and must be determined on its own merits, and it would be inappropriate to state that the publication penalty would be used in every case. However, the Council can confirm that proper consideration will be given to the use of the publication penalty where it's considered proportionate and appropriate to do so. For example, where it is likely to lead to a positive change that will rectify non-compliant behaviour. It should be noted that the publication penalty can only be used in a case where a financial penalty has already been imposed and not successfully appealed. That's all.
Thank you very much. You do have the right to a supplementary question. However, officers that provided the response are unable to attend the meeting due to them having to attend another meeting where attendance is mandatory, so they didn't have any choice, I'm afraid. If you have a supplementary question, you can either email them in or you can ask at the next place overview committee.
With your permission, I'll just make a comment about that, which will be brief, and then I'll do supplementary questions.
I'm happy for you to do that.
Really, just to give a bit of context, because this came out of a piece of work I was doing in my day job, and I ended up in quite a long conversation with a local company called Evora Edge, who do a lot of work on commercial property energy efficiency, and it was very informative. And I think there's a soft power issue here for us in terms of trying to influence the local market. So my understanding is that council properties have to have a display energy certificate, which is a much better thing than an EPC, because it's actually about energy use, not just about the fabric. The private market doesn't do that, but elements of the private market are actually ahead. I won't go into detail, but there are things going ahead in the larger sector, and most commercial landlords are actually very large asset owners. But in town, we probably do have some smaller ones as well, where they may need more support and more advice. So I think there's a role for us perhaps in our, the partnership work we do around both business and around climate emergency, to make sure that they are getting appropriate advice to help with energy efficiency measures, and also to help with the lobbying job which needs to be done to move the regulations in that direction towards green leases and stuff. I'll stop there. It was just a comment really on the whole story, but I'll think about the question and email.
Okay, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And perhaps the response to the question can be sent to us. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I have had assurances from the leader that the appropriate cabinet member would attend scrutiny meetings in the future. Haven't heard any apologies or anything.
We actually have the cabinet member sitting on the
right.
corner of the table. Richard Marshall is here in that role.
I wasn't sure whether Richard actually covered this area, so apologies.
Leslie, well, he doesn't. Well, sorry, no, he doesn't cover this area.
So that's where I'm coming from, Chairman.
Yeah, sorry,
the leader says that the cabinet members would normally attend. They may have other things, obviously, but did we receive an apology from the cabinet member?
Did we ask him to? No, I'm asking you now, Daniel.
No,
we didn't ask him, which is why he probably isn't here. So I do apologise, because it was a supplementary question and wasn't actually an agenda item.
Well, if I can, Chairman, because I noticed that the officer said this is the service reply. It's cabinet members who replied to issues raised by the scrutiny committee.
Okay, what we will do in future, though, we will ensure that anybody who has a question, we will invite whoever the relevant portfolio holder is. That may mean we'll have several, which we all love that, won't we?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, just on that issue, because
I'm sorry, this is not for public debate. This was a question asked by you. You had your response.
yeah, no,
So
if about the process.
If we can, you can talk to me about
All
it
right,
at the end of the meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I was being very liberal with you as well, Roger, so I shouldn't really have let you come in. Right, moving on. I'd like to share with you some updates on the work the committee is carrying out or has previously carried out in task and finish groups. I attended Cabinet last month to provide them with our response to the proposal for a waste minimisation strategy. I have shared this response with officers and I have asked them to ensure that the final proposal to Cabinet takes into account our response to the proposals. I expect that the strategy will return to scrutiny in due course before Cabinet make a final decision on the matter. I have made a further request as well to Cabinet that the Council responds to the recommendations of our 2019 Signs and Banners Task and Finish Group. The leader has agreed to instruct officers to prepare a response for Cabinet to consider. I will attend Cabinet again later this month to share with portfolio holders the committee's recommendation that the Council makes equal the period of consultation on planning applications given to town and parish councils and to elected members of Shropshire Council. Thank you. We can now move on to item 7. We are going to move around item 7 and 8, if that's okay with the committee. Only officers have to go to this meeting. I assume it's the same mandatory meeting as others have been invited to.
Not for me. No.
No?
I think it's.
Right, okay, that's fine. If everybody is happy, I'd like to move those 2 items round. Does anybody have a problem with this?
Chairman, if I can raise a question about item 7, and I don't disagree with moving it around.
Yeah.
Looking at the forward programme
Yes.
before us today,
Yeah.
we were due to look at the highways capital programme, and we objected, and the information required was the financial strategy 2021 to 2025 and the capital investment plan. Cannot see this anywhere in item 7. So I would suggest that this item may be deferred to the next meeting, and officers be asked to actually produce what was on our forward programme. It says review of the council's capital programme for highways 2021 to 2025, ensure the Shropshire Council has the staff and an infrastructure in place, and ensure adequate funding is allocated to LTP4. That is not answered in the papers we have us. With respect to the officers, those are the information we asked for, and we are a scrutiny committee, and that's what we asked to scrutinise. So I would propose that item 7 be deferred and officers asked to produce the information that we asked for.
Roger, I personally would not be unhappy with that because when I saw the report, to me, it was like bones without meat on. So I'm not unhappy with that, but what I would like to do is give the portfolio holder a chance to speak and also the officer, if that's okay. Do you want to respond, Richard?
Yeah. We are doing item 7 then, yeah, okay.
We're not doing item
Oh,
7,
right,
but
you just want to respond to that.
particular,
No, Roger, I take on board your comments. What we will do is I'll get Andy Wild, the head of highways, to give a brief overview of the report, and we will go back and have a look to produce those figures for the next scrutiny meeting.
okay, so we'll leave that there for a second. We'll move on to communicating highways, works and repairs. Everyone happy with that? Yeah, okay. Gareth,
Me first.
Richard.
Thank you, Chair. I'm presenting this today on behalf of Councillor Leslie Picton, who obviously is the leader of the council and also portfolio holder for communications. Unfortunately, because of a personal issue, she can't be in attendance today. We all see that highway maintenance is a very necessary and visible part of the council's functions. We have in excess of 3,200 miles of roads to maintain, and they can be a source of complaint to the council, its local members, and on social media. The highways can play a significant part in the reputation and confidence seen on us by the residents. Work on the network can range from small-scale repairs to significant infrastructure projects in partnership with several contractors and utility suppliers. Whatever the work, it is important that we communicate effectively, enabling people to are aware of what is happening, when, where, and for how long. Therefore, we can then fully make them aware of any disruptions that will inevitably be caused by maintenance on the highways. Alongside regular highways inspections, a vital communication tool for reporting defects is the app Fix My Street, which enables anybody who has downloaded the app to report defects, and with the added benefit that geo pinpoints the location of the defect being reported. This saves immeasurable amounts of time from highways maintenance engineers in trying to locate any defect. In fact, I myself, as a local member, use Fix My Street as a way of reporting defects through to highways, and then ultimately Kia as our contractor. Over the past 18 months, we've seen significant improvements in our communications. This is in large part to much closer working with the council communications and colleagues from our contractors, WSP, Kia and Multivo. We're taking more photographs now of before, during and after a project, evidencing what we have actually done. Since spring 21, we realised there was a need for a communication strategy and a new approach to our communications. As part of this strategy, we realised the importance of good communications with councillors and town and parish councils, and we have strived to improve that two-way communication, therefore keeping everybody informed of what we're doing. The quality of work provided by Shropshire Highways has increased and is an area that we are extremely proud of. Therefore, we are now actively communicating and celebrating the successes we achieve and communicate those via several media channels, thus increasing the profile and reputation of the council and the Highways Department. In the recent National Highways and Transport Survey, the NHT, we saw a higher percentage of Shropshire residents reply in comparison to national figures. And we were marked as improving in 8 out of 12 areas of communication by our residents against the same results last year. I'm sure you'll agree this is an excellent result, as this is our taxpayers themselves and the way that they view us. I would now ask for Gareth for the council communications to update on the actual strategies itself.
Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, really just to pick up on some of what Richard said, really, and add to that. As Richard says, April 21, we realised there was a need for a new approach to the way we communicated around highways, and particularly around highways maintenance work. Really just to, the aim was to be more positive, more proactive, more informative, to tell people what we were doing, why we were doing it, where we were doing it and when. and also to demonstrate the impact of that work, so providing evidence of work that had been carried out, and ideally, as Richard said, in photographic or visual form to show people the work that had been taking place. We're not just saying we're fixing the roads, we can actually evidence that and prove to people the work that is being done and the difference that's making. So that was quite a positive experience, because we put together a strategy under the overarching message of we're improving your roads, but also a nice simple message just to demonstrate all the work that's being done under highways, which is quite a lot of work. We wanted a simple message to put to people, which kind of demonstrated we're committed to improving the roads, we are improving the roads, and hopefully you will see those improvements. So the key aims of that strategy, as I've said, is to be proactive, positive, open, honest, demonstrate clearly what we're doing, invite people to comment and respond and ask any questions. We wanted to show the human side of the work, so demonstrate that the work is being done by local people. So we've got local people fixing local roads, and these are real people doing the work. It's not just what people perceive as the council fixing roads. It's actually real people who live in the county and are carrying out this work. The positive of that strategy was it had buy-in from anybody and everybody, really. So we had buy-in from the leader through cabinet, through the chief executive, the highways managers, through our contractors and the highways teams themselves. So we could see that everybody was supportive of our overall aims and our overall objectives for that strategy, and was keen to support that and keen to improve our communications. And what's come from that really is, which has really helped delivery of that strategy, is much closer working, as Richard's hinted at. I'm finding now that the council, our highways teams, our contractors are all working much more closely together. The key thing in that is we're actually getting information coming through, or better sharing of information. So from a communications point of view, what we need is the information. So if we know what's going on, we can then share that information and put that information out as we need to, with the people that need to see and hear it. So we're now getting information coming through about forthcoming work, whether it's resurfacing schemes, whether it's pothole repairs, whether it's major schemes. That information is coming through, but also coming through much sooner than it had previously. Which is helping us to get the information out to people, but also get it out much sooner so people know what is happening in their area and when, rather than just sharing it a day or two in advance, as perhaps had been the case in the past, but we're now able to share that at least a month in advance or several weeks in advance. So certainly big improvements have been made. We've been making much better use of social media. We've been making much better use of local media in terms of sharing of press releases. We've been providing more updates on our website, sharing information about what's coming up each month. There's more to be done. I think we've made some big improvements. Things have improved an awful lot in the 18 months. And I think the communication is making a real difference now in informing people, in changing perceptions, in demonstrating the work that is taking place, and hopefully get that message across. The roads are being improved. I mean, it's a two-way thing, really. One is the communication sits alongside the work that is being carried out. So the communications has to match people's perceptions. So people have to see the roads are improving, as well as seeing the message that we're putting out. And I think the fact that the teams are making great strides in improving the roads is really helping. And the communications is really supporting that work, really. So hopefully the two are going hand in hand. The work is being done, but the communications are helping to let people know the work is being done and the difference that's making. As I say, there's still improvements to be made. There's still work to be done. We're aware of that. There's work taking place at the moment to improve communications with town and parish councils and with councillors, which is a key thing. We've been lucky this year that Mark, who's alongside me here, has started work as communications manager for Kier. We also have Laura, who's the council's new highways engagement officer, and the two of them are working much more closely now with town and parish councils and with councillors. So I think Laura working with the head of work being programmed, Mark working to get information out once work has been programmed. So we are communicating and engaging much better with councillors and town and parish councillors, which is a key thing, because it's obviously important to have councillors involved, but they also, as you know, you also serve as a conduit. So if we can get the information to you, you can then share that with residents. There's more work to be done there, but that's another big positive step too.
I've got somebody waiting. Can I just ask how long you've been in post, Mark?
I started, let me get this right, February 28th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I'm sure all members will agree. I have seen a huge difference because you email local members and the the parish council at
Yes.
the same time, warning in advance and asking if we have any issues, and that is huge. So I very much appreciate that. So, Jeff.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've nails me, and we've seen a massive difference. But I've got two questions or two slight problems that niggle me and niggle the public, I think. Who actually addresses the complaints on Fix My Street? We had a problem where there's a loose curbstone. This was put on the site by multiple people, and somebody went to have a look at it and then said no action needed. And 6 weeks later, still wasn't done. So is there any two-way communication from Fix My Street rather than just saying no action needed? People couldn't come back and say, what are you going to do? How are you going to complain? How do we rectify if we disagree with that decision? That was one question. The second one, I have another niggling one where there's a manhole or a drain that keeps collapsing. You're there every month filling it up. It needs a permanent job doing to it. So I'll Fix My Street actually just doing immediate repairs to satisfy that, or are they actually looking at ongoing permanent resolutions? Because I've no complaints whatsoever with my highways department. They're really good. They come and talk to me. Fantastic. And I spoke to them and said, look, this one here, have you got records? Can you check how often you've done this? Because I reckon you've been there at least once a month for the last 12 months, which has got to be cost effective. It can't, you know. And it's all I do is get criticism about this particular drain. So I'd just like to know, is there any way of, when you communicate, make a decision, can people challenge that decision if they wish to?
Right, Andy is going to respond to that. Do you want to?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, happy to pick those two points up. First one, in terms of Fix My Street. So at the early part of this year, we launched the Fix My Street app, which is designed to get us to a position whereby members of the public can interact more effectively with us and get more meaningful information back in a effective way, because we recognise that that's part of the strategy that we brought in, as well as having more people focused on communication and engagement, that there is a route through an app to make that more effective. The first phase of that launch was to get that app in and implemented and up and running. The second phase of that is to improve the feedback loop. So what effectively you're describing there, I think, is similar to some of the information that we've had back, is that the responses are not always meaningful and not always helpful in terms of in-works programme, close, whatever. So that's something that we've absolutely picked up. We were aware that those responses initially were going to be quite generic and wouldn't always measure up in terms of what the public expectation was. So I think that's probably what you're experiencing there, a lack of quality information that allows you to understand what's happening. The second point related to manhole covers, again, that would be something that our Streetworks team would be picking up with the utility company. Now, you're absolutely right. Often, what tends to happen is the immediate issue, i.e. the safety concerns, addressed, but what should be following that up is a programme of permanent repair to rectify that problem once and for all, so we aren't continually impacting on the network, disrupting people and back to the same location sort of time and time again. I mean, the utility company have to take responsibility for that. From our perspective, that's something that we would focus on, because traffic management is a burden on our revenue account, and we would try and get something in more permanently that would mean that we didn't have that ongoing cost. So if you would share the location with me via email, I'll follow that up for you.
Will do, thank you.
That's special treatment, that is.
That's it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Roger.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. Communication with members about future work programme has improved, and I echo your comments. But communication, there's two forms of communication. There's a communication in advance that something is happening with members and parish councils. There's communication on the road. And very, very often there's signs up saying road closed, road diversion, and there's no work being done. That really niggles the local communities and really gets my ear buzzing, because that's where they complain. One example, last night I went to a school governors, came along some side roads. I came past 5 notices: road ahead closed, road ahead closed. No work was being carried out at 6 o'clock in the evening. Those notices going up, and also when one goes up and says During the daytime, the road ahead is closed. I've had an example, and I've been in touch about a road, and the road actual closure was 10 miles down the road. But the notice was at the top, and there was 2 shops, 2 local businesses down there who were suffering a real drastic drop in trade because of it. So those notices on the ground need to be looked at and maybe talk with members. I know it's like for like, an A road to an A road and all those sort of problems. But when you've got local businesses who are struggling and the road closures are 10 miles down the road, doesn't even say on the notice that it's 10 miles away. That sort of indication locally is still missing, and I presume it's with Keir. Maybe we need to do something with them, and also the road closures.
And it's been responded. That is part of what you do as well, Mark. So
It is.
Right,
I'm
okay.
happy to you to pick your bit up first, Mark, and then I'll follow on since I.
How do I do that? Which one? The right hand button. Oh, yeah. Right. Okay. As regards to road signage, and you know, use the example there of 10 miles down the road. That, generally speaking, is often because we have to accommodate various types of vehicles, say HGVs, larger vehicles, not just standard cars. So where we do that, there's often a good reason for lack of turning space, for an example, or something like that. So often, as you know, roads around Shropshire are often quite tight. So that's some of the reason. I understand that, and it does sometimes look and appear that we are just closing roads off for the sake of it. But in many cases, this is for safety and, you know, to stop vehicles often getting stuck. And those type of situations. You mentioned businesses as well. We are going to, one of the things we have picked up on a lot is that we are putting more business open as usual signs up. And speaking as a comms manager, I interact quite a lot with local businesses who are in the midst of a road closure or road works. So we are alive to that. We are putting up more and more signage, I believe, to actually inform people that they can get to businesses. And as I said, that's something that we hope we will continue, and just so business have a bit more confidence that we aren't shutting them off, you know, without good reason. Thank you. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I got to working to this chat. If that Andy can come in there, he can give you more
I think
information.
the other thing, just to sort of build on what Mark is said. I mean, the comments around closures are noted by us in terms of the service. We know that the work that we do, you know, in terms of fulfilling our statutory duty, often requires road closures, which we know that disruptive. Shropshire isn't particularly blessed with a network that means that you can find easy nip rounds. Often the diversion routes are lengthy, and because of that, you know, rat running and people finding alternative routes is much more of a risk for us. We have to try and manage that the best way we possibly can, but local knowledge and sat navs often play a part in, and as much as we try and put signs out to discourage it, it is something that's quite difficult for us to manage. You know, we've over the last 12 months taken on board the feedback that we've got, and certainly when it comes to road closures, trying to provide signing that explains to members of the public where the road is closed from and to will allow people to make better decisions early, so they don't chance it and then rat run later on when they actually find the closure point. So that's something that we've had conversations with Keir about, and the supply chain who do the traffic management, to see where we can improve on that going forward. I think the other point, just to reference back to how the funding has changed, we've now got funding that's consistent in terms of 4-year plan, which means that we can break this cycle of having to react quickly and not have sufficient time to plan. That talks to what Gareth was saying there, that they now get better, more advanced information up from the service that allows them to communicate better, because we've switched a lot away from reactive and pushed that more towards planned, which gives us the opportunity to make the arrangements that mean that when we put closures in, there is a higher probability that the signing is correct. We've factored in the businesses and anyone else who's impacted by it. And then, it gives us a fighting chance of getting engagement out early. And if there are complications, those can be presented to us in advance so we can try and mitigate. So a lot has been done, and we got required lots of things changing in terms of strategically in order to enable the outcomes that we're talking about. There is still work to be done with contractors to help them understand the need to get this signing correct and then have it lifted off quickly after the work is completed. So it isn't where it needs to be, but we're in a far stronger position than we were previously.
Okay, and the portfolio holder would like to come in as well, Roger.
As a motorist, Roger, I fully feel your pain, seriously. There is nothing more annoying than seeing road closed signs and you get there and the road actually isn't closed. Now, I'd have said that to you 18 months ago as a motorist before I got involved with highways. And there are things that happen that are totally out of our control. And there was an example in my division itself. We had a major set of roadworks that were scheduled in. The road closed signs went out 5 days in advance, as they have to do, to shut the road. On the day the road was supposed to be shut, nothing happened. And of course, I was quite frustrated. I was a bit embarrassed because my local residents, they knew I was at that time the deputy portfolio holder. So I spoke with the highways department to see what was happening. And what actually happened was, on the work pattern that was happening, we had to have a national power safety inspector to make sure that they didn't catch the overhead cables. Unfortunately, at the last minute, that engineer safety inspector actually didn't turn up for work. I think he had COVID. We were stuck then because we couldn't commence the works, which ended up costing us quite a lot of money with no redress at all to National Power. So however frustrating it can be, and believe me, I find it frustrating, sometimes the signage stays out there or it changes through things that are completely out of our control. And when the work is set out, WSP do the drawings, Kia obviously do the contract, we control it. The signs have to go out giving pre-notice. If things do change, could be weather, could be, as I just said, the national power. If they change and we can't do it, we can't then necessarily schedule immediately to pull the signage back in against all the best efforts that Kia and highways do put into do that.
Thank you. A false answer there, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. The road last night was a side road. I presume it was minor work. There was nothing like pylons or wires or anything like that. I came home in the dark at 6 o'clock, through them all, and it does throw into minds of members of the public, is it closed or isn't it? And people are now starting to ignore road closure signs because they have a bad reputation. The other one I referred to, the 10 miles, it had the times? No. It had where the closure was? No. It just said road ahead closed. And you can go past that one and the next one and the next one and the next one and carry on down. And all the junctions say diversion, turn left and go around it when you're doing a local journey. And this particular one, for example, was on the old A5 at Roman Road by the two secondary schools, and the actual work was the other side of Porterbatch. So you went through Hookergate, Anscroft, all those villages all the way down. You get to all those, but the sign at the top just said road ahead closed. I understand about HGVs, but if it was 10 miles down, local people would be aware then that it was closed down there and we could use it. And the road last night, well, I've already said about that.
Roger, did you actually email in and say about the problem you've got? Have you emailed in?
I've emailed in about the 10 miles and there was a sign went up, say businesses open as usual, but it didn't say 10 miles down the road. But last night, yes, I will email that.
I'm just wondering whether Mark, you're going to hate me for this, whether Mark is the person to email, because you would, I assume,
Yes.
people are circumventing them. So remember that name, Mark Fox.
Mark got paid up for.
Sorry, Mark. Okay,
Mark
if I can
Taylor.
move on then, please, thank you. Paul, you're next.
Yeah, just from David, we all have this problem from, at the moment, the A49 is closed, had no emergency, but that's 15 miles down the road, David. But that's beside the point, which is very awkward because I didn't know where the hell I was. Anyway, I did it, but that's not my gripe.
No.
Gripe is going on from this is about communications with the public. When they close the roads, sometimes they're not notified. Now, mine's a very rural patch. Yesterday, for the second time, I had a farmer on the phone, dairy farmer. Paul, what are we going to do about this? You just imagine these police, isn't it? They've closed my road twice in the last 2 weeks with no notification. Milk wagons can't get down there. His milk's going to get off the bank every day. They came in the night to get it because the road is open again. This is just out at Highfield. I wasn't sure if it was roadworks or communication or utility works. I wasn't quite sure. He wasn't sure. But I was just yesterday, he was on the phone again. It was closed yesterday as well. And he's bouncing. But I'm just wondering if there's any way we can communicate with the local businesses, especially dairy farms, to let them know the road's going to be closed tomorrow, or it's going to be closed today even. Just drive down the road and tell he's doing dairy farmer down with this actual road as well at the end of the road.
Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the detail unfortunately, but I'll have to look into it. Of course, when there's a statutory requirement around road closures, and whether it's a utility company or whoever, a permit has to go in, which should trigger a process. So I will happily look into that, and we should have information on our system to tell us who that.
I'll send it over to you, the address, etc.
Yeah.
But it's like second time in 2 weeks. He was bouncing, but I understand that I was a dairy farmer.
Sure. Yeah.
Perhaps you can copy Mark in as well, he can be aware of the issues that everybody's having.
Okay.
His emails are going to go through the roof.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul. David.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report. I think it's very useful that there's been a complete change of priorities really in terms of kind of information, and more members are getting more information. But I do worry sometimes that as a result of the previous portfolio holder, and Dean Carroll featuring a lot in high vis and hard hat, seemingly doing a lot of work around the county. But I do welcome it, and nevertheless, but I think more emphasis should be placed on giving members more information. And I mean, I know that's a higher priority, but I mean, in my own ward, I have a problem with there's a major problem with traffic lights outside of the Monkmore campus, and that was repaired. The repair for that was announced at very short notice, and it wasn't very clear. And I did receive an apology about it, but more information for members beforehand is absolutely crucial, really, very, very, very important, certainly for communication with our residents. The other thing I'd like to say is that as far as traffic management is concerned, I know there's a lot of concern about people who are organising traffic management don't know the area, so people there haven't got a clue where the diversions are, what's going on, and we do have local traffic management companies who are not being used to the extent that they should be. And we are, Keir and people tend to employ traffic management companies come from London or Birmingham or whatever, and the people who are on the ground have not got a clue about the area and don't know where the local roads are and what the diversion is like. So one of the recommendations I would like from this committee is that we actually look at the traffic management companies we employ, and we actually try and use some of those who are based locally in Shropshire or close by, rather than people who I believe that some traffic companies are based in London or South England or wherever, and don't know this area at all. And I think that's one of the recommendations I would like to see from this committee.
Okay, if you hang on to that, we'll come to that at the end. I think that's very good. Richard.
Thank you, David. Firstly, as a personal request, I'd ask that you don't mind too much about us dressing up in PPE. It was one of my childhood dreams to pretend I drove a road roller. And I'm going to be totally shameless and admit you'll be seeing many pictures of me out there in full high vis, hard hat, and even goggles. And I'm not embarrassed at all about that. In fairness, that's part of the communication that we do that reflects better for all of us as local members. because it's a way of getting the media interest, and it's a way of getting the message out there that we are doing it. So that actually helps all of us. But yeah, I do like dressing up in the PPE. Watch this space. I'll send you a signed copy of the next one, which will be shipped all next Tuesday. Just touching on your point about the local traffic management, I do actually agree with that in a lot of ways. And part of our Shropshire plan, as you'll be well aware, is the Shropshire Pound and getting that spent locally. And I know that's something that Mark Barrow feels very passionate about, and I totally agree with that. I think, though, and Andy will be able to pick up on this more, sometimes what we have to do is we have to work within contractors who have the skill set, because it's not necessarily just going and say dropping signs out and all the rest of it. They have to have the technical ability, capacity and space to be able to do it. And sometimes our hands are tied with that as well. And I'm sure Andy will be able to pick up on that further.
Yeah, thank you, David. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, just to echo Richard's views, I mean, we really value local providers and are working proactively to try and find ways of bringing more of them into the service. I mean, the Kia contract, when it was let, didn't necessarily take that into consideration. A lot of big tier one contractors had national agreements with traffic management providers, and Shropshire does benefit from that in terms of the rates that were provided on the contract. However, I think it's horses for courses, in my opinion. I think on some of the work that makes sense, but on some of the work it doesn't. And trying to find ways to get more tier 2 and 3 contractors, as we refer to them, involved in the service is something that we're actively pursuing, and Kia are working with them on our behalf. So there's a number of TM providers that I've had conversations with, and one in particular that we've actually tried to get onto the contract, but sometimes because these businesses are so small, they don't have the insurances and the other arrangements that allow us to bring them in by that route. So it isn't that we're shutting the door in their face. It's when we have looked into it, it has been more complicated than we envisaged. But I agree with you, because I think the local knowledge is something that has been a barrier for us. And we're looking at ways of trying to improve that and bring them into the service. We do employ them through different routes. Just last week, we had a local provider working with us on some work in the Bridgnorth area. So it is happening. I think it just hasn't happening to the extent that people would perhaps like.
Can I just come back, Chair?
Yes.
Just my information is that Shropshire Highways is very good at employing local people, local traffic management companies, but the Kia and some of the contractors we use don't. And maybe that's something, I don't know, that's something to do with the contract.
To the agreements they had when they priced the contract, and the national agreements that they have in place with providers. It's a nature of the beast in some respects, but you know, there's nothing to say that we haven't met resistance to that. It's just that they are looking to try and provide, help us bring more of the tier 2 and 3s onto the contract, because they, like us, understand that one size doesn't fit all, and there are benefits to having them working with us. So it is something that's on the agenda.
Recommendation.
Yeah.
Richard, do you want to come in?
No, that's fine.
No, it's
yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Very good points there. We'll come back to that at the end.
If we come back to it later,
I will do,
great.
yeah. Thank you very much. Julian.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. Well, 3 questions. First of all, I'm just asking about, in terms of the report, it talks about a capital programme to facilitate internal and external communications. I'm just wondering what that actually means, because it does suggest that, and a point earlier seems to suggest that there's an internal communications issue. So I'm just wondering if you can explain what that might be, and if there's anything you think that we should be recommending to help you with that internal communications issue. So that's the first one. The second one is just about mapping and information. So I'm just interested in you know, how effectively does, for example, Google Maps get updated with information? If we're doing a road closure, does that get on Google Maps? And also we have, and I haven't got my council phone with me, but we've got an app on there, haven't we? One Network or something, which, you know, presumably that is fairly live information about all these things as well. So it's just checking whether we have that information. So that's the second one. And the third question is this. It's really interesting to hear about how you prioritise the work combination of how busy the road is, the general state of the road, and potholes all going into combination. If I understand it correctly, that's how you do it, which is good to hear. there's no mention about how you prioritise work around footways and cycleways. In fact, there's no mention of them at all. So it would be interesting to hear how that gets prioritised, and does it, and is there an ongoing programme, and does the reporting of footways issues also get picked up out of Fix My Street in the same sort of way?
Okay, Gareth, can you answer that?
I can answer on the first point, June. I think if I understand what you're saying, I think it just illustrates the fact that communications is quite a broad area and incorporate all sorts of different things. It's not just social media, it's not just press releases. There's internal communications, there's communication with councillors. Even the road signs, as Roger mentioned, that's another example of communications, is how best we get the information and the message out to as many people as possible, or ideally to people that need to see and hear that message. So this is why it's probably good. We've got several people involved in this process really. So from my point of view, we can get the information out to the press and the social media and that on the council website. Mark's role is obviously communicating with the parish town councils and councillors and so on. Within the highways team, there are other colleagues who are communicating with utilities companies and developers and so on. I know Andy's do some internal communications with their staff. Mark's working on some internal communications with key staff. So I suppose it just illustrates the breadth of what you could define as communications. Really, there's an awful lot in that internal, external, two-way, one-way. So, do you want to elaborate on exactly what
it's just under 7.5? It suggests there's a specific capital programme to do with facilitating internal and external. External communication. Just wondering what that refers to.
The other reports.
You're looking at the wrong report.
You got
Am I looking?
Yeah, we swapped
It's
them
on the
round.
communications
We
one.
swapped them both around.
Apologies.
I don't.
That's okay.
I was to
I
just.
can.
You got me.
Well, we've got straight away there. Okay. But actually, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
That's all right. Yeah, but I thought you were looking a little plumber.
No, don't worry. But it was a point where I think it was a point worth making anyway. Is that there was an awful lot of work taking place. Can I just quickly say on the One Network? I mean, you raised a good point with One Network, because the danger with the communication, especially around highways programs, is you put the information out there and that can change, or it may be delayed, or it's dependent, so things may be delayed or put back. So what we're trying to do on communications is use One Network as a central point of the latest up-to-date information. So anything we put on the website, anything we put on social media, for example, we're saying please see One Network for the latest information, because that will be the latest, that will be kept up to date. If things do change, that's where the latest information will be available. So we have been trying to emphasise that as a key message. Please use One Network for the latest, and also not just the latest, but also the detail of a scheme as well, because if you interrogate One Network, as you may have done, there's an awful lot of information there about.
And who has access to that? Is that interest? Is it public?
It's public, yeah. There are. I think there are different versions of it. So if you sign up, it gives you greater access. So there's the version you can go. You can just go onto it. You can get limited information. But if you sign up, I believe you can then interrogate it further and get more detailed information. And there's a better search facility that allows you to search further into the future.
This is communication. I'm happy to keep going with it. Richard.
Yeah, I think I agree with Gareth a little bit there as well, that there's many spokes to the full communication wheel. And I think as well, let's not forget that we're a major spoke in that communication wheel as well. As local members, we're all getting the emails now, which we've said that we're agreeing to, that we're hearing about the road closures. We then go out on social medias, etc. But it's for us locally as well. Not everybody will pick up the social media. Not everybody will pick up the emails. And I think we play a key part in that as well. And obviously some councillors are more active on their own social medias than others. But we are a key function in that communication channel as well. And the more spokes that we can throw into the wheel, the better wheel that we've got. So let's not forget that we're part of that as well.
Thank you. Right, Pam.
Thank you, Chair. Just to start with, I say that I agree with the other councillors. I think things have got better generally about communication this last year, certainly. Fix My Street, which I think is I think we all agree it's not perfect yet, but if I just read part of an email I had from a resident, it's actually about a verge cutting issue. But she went through the customer service line, the 0345 number. And she said she reported the grass is only being cut once this year on the 13th of July. I phoned customer service on the 5th of September and the 14th of October asking if the verge could be mowed before the winter. I received a Fix My Street email on the 17th of October saying, pleased to advise the work has been completed. State change to fix. This is not the case. I once again telephoned on the 18th of October querying that email, and there's nothing further as yet. But obviously it got linked to Fix My Street, but the work hasn't been done, but she's been told it has been done. So is that because of a breakdown between the 0345 number and that? Do we know? So that's my main question.
Yeah.
A couple of other points, just small points on the report. In 6.2, talking about the approach that the communication strategy is going to be. There's a line in there which says, tone, humility, injecting humanity. Now, this is a public document. I don't think that reads well. It appears to be rather cynical and, let's try and, convince the audience out there we're doing well, but I just don't think that's a good look for public report. And then also it talks about new livery for the vans, for the vehicles that we're going to be using, Shropshire Council. We're all in times of hardship at the moment, to our residents. Is this just a few stickers or is this a repaint job, and how much is it going to cost? Thank you.
I think we'd all, every councillor around this table would agree about the Fix My Street, because I think all of us have had communication saying a job's being done when it happens. So I don't know how that is working and why that is happening. Perhaps we can have a response, but if I just take Richard,
Sure,
who's been waiting patiently.
Okay, thank you for that, Pam. On the Fix My Street, there was a known glitch. We've got to accept that the system is in its infancy, and actually getting it involved and integrated completely with our systems has been quite difficult. And there was a glitch in place that once a job had been allocated to a different external department, for some reason it was sending a message, and I had problems with this with some of my own. And I've spoken to the portfolio holder for IT, Rob Kittins, about this, and I'm sure Andy will pick up more on this in a moment. When you talk about the branding, one of the things that we're working on, and again, this is an important part of communication, is we're working towards a Shropshire Highways Alliance, so that Kia, WSP, Highways, we're all working under that same brand. And it's encouraging our contractors to feel part of the process. It's part of being part of the Highways department, as opposed to an alienated side of it. Even though there is an upfront cost to put the sticker in on and to do the branding, that's actually being repaid amply by the buy-in from the contractors and their teams. And I'm sure Mark will pick this up from Kia, that they're now taking a pride in the fact that it's Shropshire Highways, and everything that we're doing, and both Andy and I, we are pushing ourselves so that Shropshire Highways becomes an exemplar in the country, in the way that we're not only responding, we're communicating, we're repairing. So I actually think that any money, and it's not a massive amount, I'd have to come back to you with figures for the rebranding, is a worthwhile amount, because we're getting so much payback. We're getting staff going out there now who feel like they belong to something in the Alliance and Highways. And that's actually reflecting in the work and quality of work, more importantly, that they're conducting. Andy?
Thanks, Richard. I mean, Richard covered most of it. I think you're absolutely right. We did have glitches and we've had difficulty in that early stages, and I think that was always likely to be the case when we launched this new piece of software, because of course it's an interface, but what's going on behind that is connectivity with our own data systems, of which our own staff use, and the connectivity between the two things is still being tested, and the second phase of that, as I've said, is trying to make sure that we build confidence in that feedback loop, and that we don't have instances of the ones you've just described, and that people can incredibly get good information back that reflects what's actually happened. So it is noted. All of that, all of those issues have been captured in the part of the second phase that's recently started.
Can I ask when you think that this glitch will be eradicated? Have you got a time scale?
Well, I think we've resolved the initial glitch, because I think this was linked to work that was going out to other departments. So I think we have resolved that one. I think that was a fix that we put in place. But the wider piece around, making sure that we get the feedback loop successfully is a bigger piece of that.
Yeah, because I'm assuming the glitch that you were on about is ongoing. It's recent.
I went directly to an officer in the end. And,
All right, so it wasn't recent.
yeah, October. Yeah.
October.
Yeah,
right,
so it's
okay.
not
Yeah,
away
it's,
that long.
it's very.
Okay, okay. Perhaps at some point you can come back with some feedback on exactly what's happening and if it's changed. And yeah. No.
Thank you. Can I just add something that Richard alluded, and perhaps add to something Richard said as well? In speaking for Kia and in the pride that we've taken in working for Shropshire, since I started in February, I have been taking some cases by the way we work, the way we kind of perceive Shropshire's, not as being our own patch, but how we are invested in it in every sense of the word. But I think that's being borne out. The start of the year, we had a lot of flooding in the county, and a lot of our two gangs of our operatives actually went out of their way to help. I think it was two sets of quite elderly people to actually get out of the floods and to actually get to a place of safety until the AA were able to assist in that kind of thing. And secondly, I have no measurement until this year, but we are getting a lot more positive comments through the council and directly to us in terms of thank yous and compliments. I do think it is paying off now. So, yeah.
Have you got any statistics on Fix My Street and satisfaction level and how it's changed?
Yeah, I mean, we from our service perspective, we capture the amount of complaints and compliments we get, and again, that's used to sort of inform the service. And I mean, we've been using that sort of ground up information to sort of help shape the service for the last 2 years, really. And I think maybe a sort of a reference to the fact that we are on the right track is the feedback we've had through that NHT survey, which is completely independent. It's a survey of Shropshire residents and across the board, highways in particular, comms, but also the reactive service. All of those performance indicators have seen quite a marked improvement. So we are recording that in different forms.
Yeah. Could you send members of the committee or bring it back to committee the statistics on that?
Yes.
So we can see how it's improved.
Yeah,
Thank you. Or we can just email it out. Do you send it to Daniel? We'll just email it out. Thank you.
Joyce.
Yes, Gareth.
Can I just make one point? I mean, Pam raised the use of the word humility for the strategy. That
Oh
I
yes.
think it's probably quite key to address that, because it was effectively the starting point when we drew up the strategy, was recognising that the condition of the roads wasn't great. We were acknowledging that, we recognise that, and that was kind of the starting point, really. So yeah, we know the roads aren't perfect, and we're determined to do something about it, and here's what we're going to do. So it kind of links in with that, being open and honest, and sort of acknowledging what the problem was at the time. Really, things may well have moved on since, and I think things have moved on since, but that was kind of quite key at the time that we first pulled the strategy together, was acknowledging that.
If I may say, I think that's fine, but I just don't think it's a place for in a public document. I think it would be best an internal phrase.
I tend to agree with you, Pam. It does sound a bit
Cynical.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Gary. And we now have Dan, who's been very patient.
My question's been answered.
Oh, I like that.
I should sit in Richard.
Roger?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And it's building up on what was said a few minutes ago. I see in 7.1, it says about complaints and they've fallen from 34% to 27%. But that percentage depends on the total number. It would be good to have some actual numbers there to see what they are. And then my final comment was on the next page, where it says in 8.1, a further review of highway maintenance pages of the council website will be carried out. Is there any indication of timescales when that may well happen or will happen?
That's pretty much ongoing, Roger. So one thing we're keen to do is use the website as a central pool of information, central pool of up-to-date information that people can go to for the latest. So we're keen that the website is kept current, kept up to date, and reviewed on a regular basis. That's pretty much an ongoing task. If you spot anything on there that isn't accurate,
Progress there.
But if anyone spots anything on there that isn't accurate, isn't up to date, then please let us know and we can make sure that's rectified.
Okay, thank you. I think we've discussed lots of things here. If I come back to you, David, I'm just wondering whether we actually need a recommendation or whether we just ask portfolio holder and officers now to do that particular thing that you want. Well, I think we all want.
Yeah, I think if it could be, outcome of this meeting is that we have a report back maybe on, what has been done to employ, to
employ
Local,
local traffic management companies more often than what happens
yeah.
at the moment.
Could we have that report back just for information at the next meeting? Would that be okay? Is that okay with everybody? Yeah. Okay, we'll do that. In that case, we'll finish this item. I don't think we need to vote on that, so I think it's a given. But we can move on to item 8, which we put round, so it's Highways Capital Programme. Roger made some points before, which I don't disagree with. I was surprised how light the report was. You thought it wasn't.
Well, I was just to pick up on that point, Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a standard kind of brief, I suppose, for producing the report, which I've worked to. Having picked up on some of the comments, it would appear that there's information that was requested that we haven't covered, and it doesn't just span highways.
Okay, if I can just point out as well that Steve Smith actually should have been presenting this, shouldn't he? Or should have been producing this report. And unfortunately, he is off for a few months. So you picked this up at the last minute, and I think maybe the information.
It's quite possible that I haven't been given all of it.
That's what I'm thinking.
I'm more than happy to defer this if everyone's comfortable and provide the information that's originally requested.
Okay, so is it, oh, David, yes?
Can I just, I mean, before we defer it, I agree very much with Councillor Evans' point on deferring it, but there's a few things I think which are not in the report, which I would like to see in a future report.
I was going to ask.
Is that okay?
What is it that you would like to see? I mean, obviously there's a lot there because we want more to do with budgets, etc. So what would you like to see, David?
Yeah, I'd like to see a percentage breakdown of how the capital funding is spent and between carriageways, cycleways and footways. I mean, I think that would be really useful. The climate change appraisal, it says there are no direct climate change implications as a result of this report. But I mean, if we were to prioritise, cycleways and footways, there would be a climate change benefit. So I think that needs to be examined.
Okay.
And also the issue of active travel. The fact is that if we spend more on active travel, then we are more likely to get grants from the government, given the kind of the ambitions of the government to increase active travel and targets that have been set. If we actually achieve those, then it makes us more likely to get grants from government. So I've got some details here I can supply you with, but that's essentially the argument. I would like to see some reference to that, and also, I mean, the SIL monies. I think that SIL's monies ought to be included in this.
But you're broadening it out. So you're doing that, and I think that's for the end of the I know, I was going to say something relevant then. Oh, yes. Having read the report as well, I'd just like to highlight footpaths get very little mention in the papers, and footpaths are, believe it or not, so I can see nodding heads, a major issue, particularly in rural areas where I can see, I've seen this morning actually, where grass is growing. It's probably about 4 or 5 inches tall between the curbs and and the tarmac, which obviously is going to mean the path disintegrates at an earlier time than it normally would before. There used to be weed killer put on all these, didn't they? And you're not allowed to put weed killer.
No.
Please, Paul.
I go on my patch and he refuses to anybody sprayed on the street because he has a cat who goes outside.
Oh, so you're not allowed.
To spray.
Oh, is it
Which
the law?
is a real pain.
We know it's the law.
I mean, this links to the street scene service, which is a completely different kettle of fish.
Well, we'll leave you with it's just on that report it mentions them. So we'll leave that. We want somebody from street scene to come and talk to us then, because there is an issue with footpaths. Is everybody happy to defer, Roger?
Yeah, happy to defer it, Chairman, but as a particular issue, if you want, it makes reference in it about the asset management system.
Yeah.
Been in it, looked at it, 2019, 2018, a lot of the information, although there is a dashboard which is dated October 22. So I noticed at the cabinet meeting in September, it had a performance report going to that, which only went up to December 20. And in that report, it said the need for principal highway maintenance to be increased because they were getting worse. In the dashboard, there's a lot there which says good, 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 good. I don't know how that was arrived at. Who who or what performed that, but it can be covered in the
When we
report
get
that
the
comes
answer,
back.
when it comes
Yeah,
back.
but that dashboard, I think, is quite good,
Yeah.
but the reasons behind all those statements.
Yeah, before I move on to Richard, is there anything else that anybody wants in that report that they feel should be in it, Pam?
No, just to underline, I mean, Julian touched on it when he was on the wrong report. And David when he was on the right report. You know, there's a sentence in there, it could be the right time to review the strategy to accommodate these themes, and that's talking about climate change.
Yeah.
And active travel, well, we want long beyond this is now the time, and we've gone past that, and that really is a really important thing for this report when it's fleshed out.
Okay.
Go on,
Yeah,
and,
I have, yeah.
We'll wait for you. There you go. In that case, can I just take a vote on deferring the item? Oh, sorry, Richard,
that's
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just a quick one. I'm going to interject and really support Andy here. You know, Andy did have this dropped on him. This would have been a Steve Smith thing. Steve Smith is unfortunately off ill for the next few months. So I think in the short space of time that he had available and also the limited brief, I actually think the report Andy produced was the best he possibly could. And I think that should be recognised.
Yeah.
He has done and he's doing a great job. I also know that you all want to put budgets in and financials. Unfortunately, Andy's not in a place as no officers are at the moment, because we are currently, as we're all aware, going through the budgets for the next financial year as well. So until they've been agreed, gone to cabinet, gone to scrutiny and done everything that the budgets do, we're limited a little bit on what he can do with that, but we can do up to date stuff of where we've come from to where we are. But forward projections, it's going to be very difficult until Andy's had his budgets through.
Yeah, and I also think we all, I'm sure we're all aware that our budgets are going to be squeezed so tight that there's an awful lot of things that we will not be able to do as a council. And I think we've all got to be realistic about that. Roger, did you want one last word?
It was the current year that I was on about, and I recognise that next year, December is when the cabinet published their report and budget for next year. But it's the current year where we are with the capital spend that was in the February programme, because the July and the October cabinet papers, the September and October cabinet papers, although they give financial strategy updates, it makes no reference whatsoever to the capital programme.
That'll be at the same time that you're producing the alternative budgets as well as the budget.
Could be, could be.
Okay. Right, and if I can just say, and we realise that you were landed in it, and I think it's just the portfolio holder there said a word. I think we all realise that. I don't think it's your.
We'll pick it up and
Yeah.
make sure that.
And I'm sure everybody here will agree that it is really good to have officers here and the portfolio holder in person, because it certainly adds to the quality of the meeting, in my opinion. So thank you all very much for that. We'll wind that one up now then. Thank you very much. We haven't voted actually on deferring. I think we'll have to, won't we? So could somebody please vote on the deferral? Roger. Seconder, David. Everyone in agreement? Brilliant. Thank you very much. If officers want to go, they can. Because we're just moving to our committee work programme. Hello?
Is that included?
You've got to, no, Paul, you can go. That's fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just before they go, so one of the considerations for the work programme was to do with contractors.
We've moved on now, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I know, but just that I was, and when we come to the work programme, so
Oh, right, okay.
because what I'm saying is,
Do we need to keep them there?
just that, one of the things I was going to suggest is that there should be mentioned in Multivo, I think it is, as along with Kia and WSP. I don't know much about, I mean, maybe it's my fault, but I don't know much about the arrangement with Multivo, what the contract, whether they're doing it on a day-to-day basis. I just don't know. I would just like more information about the relationship with Multivo, because it has been mentioned in the meeting and in the papers.
I mean, Multivo are subcontracted to Kia, so they work directly through Kia. I mean, we brought them into the contract. I think it was about 18 months ago, due to, I suppose, not having the full range of interventions that we needed. We didn't have something that was delivering what I would describe as effective maintenance, with reactive maintenance on A and B roads. We were doing quite small repairs, and often the area around that repair was the next bit of repair. So we did an analysis and a trial, and we've now started to bring that in, and is now our method of choice for repairing A and B defects, which puts a larger repair on the road, and again prevents us going back to the same location time and time again, because often when you get a pothole, it isn't in isolation, there's a defective area of carriageway around it. What that has allowed us to do is again build a more effective maintenance program that allows us to then surface dress that link of road, because it's been brought up to a good standard. So to answer your question, they're a supply chain partner of Kia, but they were part of our kind of alliance strategy to change some of the maintenance practices that we had. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah, it would answer the question. Would maybe some briefing about it at some point would be useful, I think.
You can just send a briefing note to Daniel and we can have it circulated.
Yeah.
So that it can be circulated to all members, so they're aware of it. That's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much. You can go now, honestly. Thank you very much.
Thanks, good nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
So we then move on to item 9, which is the place overview committee work program. Do you want to talk us through it, Daniel?
Thank you, Chair. And the work overview is Scrutiny Office. Obviously, most immediately, we have the Community Zone Committee happening next week. Community Zone Committee will be looking at the economic growth strategy. You might think it would ordinarily sit within this committee, but due to different capacities and workloads, we originally drafted, the first draft went over to the Community Zone Committee. Some of the members have suggested that we hold a joint committee on this topic, and I agreed to take this to the Democratic Services. And it turns out that there actually is no mechanism by which we can create joint committees. What we actually do is we invite members of one committee to participate in another committee, rather than the chair provides that invitation. So Councillor Macy, Chair of the Community Overview Committee, has cordially invited all of you to participate in his meeting next week.
Would that include voting rights?
Pardon?
Would that include voting rights?
Don't think so, no.
What day is that, Daniel?
It should be in your diaries. I've sent you all an invitation to it.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in there, please? When in the past, I know it's in the past, we had, and you might remember, when we had joint committees, we were all like to vote, weren't we?
I know what you would.
We were all like to vote when we had joint committees.
Yeah.
So if you can take that back and double check.
I'll go back and double check, but I mean, I can confirm that there's no official mechanism to create an official joint committee. It's essentially just a meeting of the Communities Overview Committee.
Chairman, is there anything that says it can't happen? We did. We have in the past. Unless the Constitution says.
Yeah, the Constitution provides no mechanism, but what it would have actually been is rebadged as a joint committee, but it would have just been one committee, the other members invited.
It was a joint committee. Yeah. Okay, if you can have a look,
Yeah.
that'd be really great.
So I'll have a look, but anyway, at the moment, as it stands, you are cordially invited to participate in the community. Overview. Yes, Wednesday 23rd. You've all got an invite, it's all in your diary.
23rd, the meeting.
Yeah.
It should be in your diary, and I'll make sure that you receive the papers on that. I did send you all an email explaining all of this, so if you're looking for some more information, I'll just have a look in there again. I'm actually looking on the diary now, and yeah, you've all got invites.
What date did you send it, Daniel?
Pardon?
What date did you send it?
Oh, I can't remember.
It should sit on your calendar as an invite.
Yeah, but it's all on
I
your
deleted
calendar.
it.
So Julian, you've accepted it. Steve, you haven't. Joyce, you've kindly accepted
I'm
it.
doing it virtually because
So,
I'm unable to do
Peggy, David have kindly accepted it. So
Well done.
it's all in there if you want it. If you can't find it, then just ping me an email and I'll send you another invite and invite you and re-invite you to the meeting. And I will check with Miranda about exactly about the voting rights on this. Obviously, as well, we're going to. This committee has 2 task and finish groups under its wing at the moment. Those have now been constituted and filled with members. We will be holding one of our first meetings on this on the 22nd of November, and that's the housing developments, where officers will be attending and will be agreeing the scope on this. I think with both of these topics, obviously, you have to remember I'm a jack of all trades and have to respond quite quickly to your requests. So generally, our original terms of reference are sort of what we know with the information that we have time. I think what's been clear, certainly with the river water quality one, is that the scope of it needs to be far wider than we thought it was going to be. When this was first agreed by the committee, I think it was very much along the vein of holding Severn Trent Water and the Environment Agency to account for storm overflow pollution into rivers. I think what's becoming quite clear from my research into this, and indeed one of our local elected members, Philip Dunn, chairs the Environmental Audit Committee and wrote an extensive report on this in Parliament recently, is actually the local authority has a much larger role to play in river water quality than you might think at first blush, both in terms of planning decisions, in farming, in terms of maintaining good handling of slurry and slurry leakage into rivers, but also with regards to overflow from drainage from highways into rivers as well, which according to the Environment Audit Committee constitutes something like 20% of river water pollution. So obviously we that changes the scope somewhat, because there are areas that you need to explore more deeply. So we're going to bring this back to we're going to bring both of the terms of reference to initial meetings of the committee, obviously decide upon a chair, and then listen to officers and broaden those scopes out before we start work on them in earnest. Although having said that, we've already started to line up some of the meetings and appointments you've asked for. With regards to the Housing Developments Task and Finish Group, we've lined up Shingler Homes, who have very kindly agreed to come and attend one of the meetings to provide their perspective with regards to finishing off a development and handing that over on the adoptions. We've also agreed with the planning team that one of the planning officers there will arrange with the members of the group a walking tour of some of the developments in Shrewsbury. I think it will be to sort of highlight some of the good examples and some of the less good examples. So both of those are in hand at the moment and should be reporting back. If it's okay with you, I'll just keep providing a verbal update to these meetings as to how those are progressing. Save on work there than anything. Obviously, you've agreed now to carry over your highways capital and budget item through to the next meeting, and I've just written, I think Joyce hit the nail on the head really. Some of this is being lost in unexpected handover with Steve Smith's absence. I've just been looking back through my notes, and there's quite an extensive correspondence with Steve and referrals to meetings that we'd had about it, and obviously this hasn't translated into a brief to go over to Andy. So I think a learning point from that will be to emulate what I did with Gareth in the communications report, where he received quite a detailed brief from him, what was expected. So I think a learning point going forward is to rely a bit less on meetings with the assistant directors and a bit more on something written for them, so they've got an understanding of exactly what you want from them. Looking on a little further, sorry, I'm taking that for it's actually on the laptop, isn't it? Your next meeting, obviously, quite aside from the capital budget programme, you've agreed to look at local transport plan LTP4, which is obviously yes, a very big document and very much in a sort of. Well, it's 2011, I think. It's been 11 years in production, so that continues at the moment.
Can I ask a question on that, Daniel? Would it be possible, because that is a big document, would it be actually possible for committee members maybe to hear virtually from officers about it before the meeting, in advance of the meeting? So that we have a bit more in-depth understanding of it. I think that's a big thing, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I think that would be. I think that would be very useful, actually.
Anybody else feel the same?
Yeah. We need some background.
Yeah.
It could be an all members briefing, couldn't it? Just an update before.
Well, I tell you what. I'm just. Yeah. No. You're right. Actually, I think. Sorry, I'm thinking off the top of my head here as well now. Actually, the Communities Overview Committee has obviously agreed to take on board a lot more of the community-based transport work or scrutiny of that. And they're meeting next Thursday to thrash out some of these issues. And I do wonder, I don't know if I'm sort of, whether that might be an opportunity, because a lot of their work and a lot of your work is going to stem from the local transport plan going forward. This is going to set the tone. It should set the tone for the spending on capital investment for the next 15 years on transport, not just highways, but footpaths, cycle paths, transport, buses, bus services, bus infrastructure, train infrastructure. It's the whole kit and caboodle. So, I don't know. If you leave it with me, it might be actually that meeting next week is a good opportunity for you, for the Community Zone Committee, to hear from the officers and to hear from the local transport plan and how this all stems out. Failing that, there's no reason why I couldn't set up a all-member briefing on the local transport plan. There's no reason why you could do both as well. If you leave it with me in Victoria, we will try and work out a way by which we can beat this, because Joyce, you're absolutely right. It's a big document, and I know in the past when this has come to scrutiny, the members have looked a bit stunned when they've received it, because there's a lot to take on. There's a lot. It's quite conceptual in there, and obviously you're all very smart people, but none of you are transport planners. So I think a lot of it will just go without somebody explaining it in plain English. So
Thank you then.
Is that all right with
yes,
you?
Please.
Okay.
I think we'd all agree with that, Roger.
Fine. One more thing I just noted as well, sorry if I might before I sort of open it up. You're looking at the, you've agreed finally to look at the LED lights, lamppost replacement programme. I've just been looking, while we've been discussing communicating highways, I've been having a look at Fix My Street, just idly looking at some of the issues on there. 75% of them concern lighting columns. So I do wonder whether, and I'm again just thinking out loud, if we ought to, or I ought to perhaps explore that topic in a little more depth, and whether or not there's scope to broaden it into the matter of street lighting in general. Again, I'm just throwing ideas out here. Obviously, it's your committee, not mine.
I'd just like to know why they're not replacing the ones that are actual lights now that are out.
So, lighting in general.
I don't care what light goes, Roger. I just want some lights.
Please, through the chair.
Sorry, I do apologise.
Thank you.
Can I just say there is a
Yeah.
there is a known problem with lighting.
You're still live, yeah.
We're in a second lamps, and we've been told that old style, some specific types of old style lamps are no longer attainable. So they've been waiting and waiting and waiting for new things to come, so it's invert lamps and the shortage of those, because the crisis and the war and so on. So that there is a problem, and it's getting worse.
Can I make a suggestion that Daniel actually speaks to officers and find out if that is the issue? There's no point looking at it because it's a supply thing. So if you look at that, I've got actually Julie wants to say something and Roger wants to come back. I think, but Julie into this.
Thank you. It's actually a process point which refers to the meeting we've just had, and it also goes back to Roger's original question. It just feels, and I'm asking really, in terms of members' questions and the sort of scrutiny that we do, it feels to me that scrutiny is about actually questioning officers. It actually felt a bit odd to me to have a report presented by a cabinet member. That felt like the risk of politicising it a bit. You know, questions to portfolio holders go to cabinet, as I understand it, or possibly even to full council. But here, it should be a possible. You know, the whole point we've got a task and finish group about development is because we weren't actually that satisfied with the answer we got from an officer with regard to that. We thought there was more to discover, and also, whilst I absolutely appreciate having portfolio members along is useful, but in a way they're here to hear how we are scrutinising the work of their department, and they should, you know, hopefully they would actually join in that in a way, rather than presenting things which then risks it being more politicised and more defensive. So I'm just a little bit concerned about whether we're heading in a direction, because Richard specifically said he was here presenting on behalf of Leslie, which felt very peculiar, given that it was a report
Yes, I'll let Daniel answer
Yeah.
that. I suspect it's something to do with the scrutiny.
Actually, a confession that Roger made a very point earlier that I made a mistake earlier in talking about it being a service response, and it wasn't a service response, it's a portfolio holder response. For clarity, when you ask a question hearing within a scrutiny committee, that question is being asked of the portfolio holder and not the officer. A common mistake, and one I make as well, and I'm a scrutiny officer, so there you go. Thank you. So yes, I mean, in terms of who you scrutinise in these meetings, there is no reason why you shouldn't scrutinise portfolio holders. This is a non-party political body, and irrespective of your political party, you should all be working together to scrutinise the administration, which is obviously the portfolio holders and the leader. And whilst officers can provide professional insight to an extent probably the portfolio holders cannot, nonetheless, it is the administration that you're scrutinising.
Okay, we got that, Roger.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the portfolio can bring whoever they want to, and they can say, well, the officer will answer that question. So, yeah, but
Can I just say as well, I thought that was really good that he actually answered the questions. He obviously knows in depth his portfolio, so I was very impressed with that. But I understand what you're saying, because normally reports are led by officers and the portfolio holder responds. And that it is a change. Is that as a result of the person that came in from the LGA and scrutiny, or?
No, nobody's seen that review yet, and I say that hand on heart.
Right, okay.
So you, Chairman,
Yeah.
the scrutiny review officer was amazed that cabinet members did not attend scrutiny meetings.
I think
It is in the constitution that it is normally the cabinet member will attend scrutiny meetings to do it, because they're the they're the giving direction to officers, and officers may be in a position that they disagree with the portfolio holder and they can't really hear. It's the portfolio who say, yes, we're doing this because.
So I suspect that is actually happening. I suspect that somebody's told them what partly was going to be in the report, and that's why, because Leslie was going to come today, so for an issue that she had.
My question though, Chairman, is, and it's from comments you made at the start of the meeting to do with item 7.
Yes.
I'm a past chairman of a scrutiny committee
Yes.
a number of years ago, and I'm assuming that you didn't even see a draft of the report. Really, if an officer does a report, the chairman of a scrutiny meeting used to actually see the rough draft of it to see if to point out anything that needed to be added before it comes here, because it did. The officer spent a lot of time doing their report, and no doubt if you had seen it, you would have said, well, that isn't, you need to do it this way. So what I'm saying is, and I presume we can give you delegated authority to actually see a draft of the report.
Well, if I can just mention with Daniel here, days gone by, because I've been here too long, what was happening is, and Peggy will remember it, that actually when the draft report was done, you would sit down with the officers that had written it, you'd go through it before it's actually produced and sent out. And I don't think that was a bad thing. And actually now you've got virtual, it's so easy to do. But I think that is something that should be picked up and roll with. But if you can mention that, Daniel, perhaps to Tim or whoever.
Absolutely. I mean, this I think certainly 3-4 years ago when I started, when we last conducted a review, this is something that we agreed with officers that would happen going forward. I'm trying to sort of think back to a time when this happened on a regular basis, and I suspect it probably withered on the vine the second everybody looked away from it, and we are now back to, we're not as bad as it was sort of three years ago, say, where every report was late or on the deadline or what have you. I mean, we do generally get reports on time, but you do make a very good point. Sometimes the report we get, or the report that's submitted to committee services or to scrutiny, comes on the deadline, and we don't have time to comment on it. So I think this is almost certainly an issue that will come through the scrutiny review. So I would suggest you wait until that review gets published and see whether that's a recommendation in there. If it's not, then I would suggest that you raise it.
Yeah, good point, Roger. I'm aware we've been a little while, not as long as we would have if we'd done the next item.
It's gone cold, that's all.
Oh, sorry. So, yeah, sorry, Dan, you finished going through the work programme?
Yeah, I'm
You
done.
don't say anything else?
Unless
Okay.
anyone has any additions to the
Okay.
programme.
So the date and time of the next meeting is the 26th of January, 2 o'clock at Town Hall. Thank you all very much for
My
attending.
apologies, please.
Yes, apologies.
I'm just waiting for the live stream to stop as well. No, you carry on, but I've got to stop the live stream in a sec.
It's the politics.